Shalom, holy brothers and sisters. This week's Parsha is Parshat Vayeshev, and it means "and he sat." And it's a very famous story of Joseph and his technicolored coat. So as you know, the story of Joseph is a story of jealousy, that he was the most beloved son of his father Jacob, and so Jacob made for him a technicolored coat, and his brothers were very jealous because of this. Joseph was the son of Rachel, which was Jacob's beloved wife, who only bore him two sons, Joseph and his younger brother, Benjamin. So Joseph seemed to be the spiritual successor of his father. Although he was not the firstborn, he seemed to merit, based on his gifts, that he was able to interpret dreams and so forth. He was just on a more spiritually elevated level than his brothers. And his brothers detested him for this. And because they were so jealous of him, they wanted to kill him. And so here are some of the excerpts from this week's Bible portion and some of the lessons that we can learn from it. So it says, Vayeshev Yaakov, and Yaakov sat, which is in Genesis chapter 37, verse 1. And what it's talking about here is that we need to focus on personal growth, not serenity. Like, sometimes when our lives are difficult and challenging, we have all kinds of different obstacles in our lives, we think that this is bad. Well, actually, all of the forefathers in the Bible had very difficult lives. They had all kinds of challenges and obstacles. And spiritual growth comes from going through all of those various experiences. So we shouldn't look at those different experiences that we have that are difficult as something that is unwanted or to be avoided. It's something that we should accept with grace. It says here that the purpose of this world is for a person to elevate himself by passing the numerous tests that come to him. The goal is spiritual growth from every life situation. Therefore, it is considered improper to focus on serenity. Okay, and another lesson comes from chapter 37, verse 14. Vayomer lo, and he said to him, Lech na, go please, re'eh et shalom achicha, check on the welfare of your brothers. Shalom means peace and also means wholeness, but in this context, it's the welfare of your brothers. Ve'et shalom hatzon, and the welfare of the sheep. See how the sheep are doing too. Not just your brothers are important, but the animals are important too. And this lesson here is about developing compassion for all living creatures. And today, when you see a person who acts with loving kindness towards defenseless animals, it's a very good sign that that person has a good heart. So a person who can treat someone or something who has nothing to give back to them, like a baby or like a homeless dog or something, a person that treats animals with love and compassion, that feeds them, that takes care for them, that looks after them, that's a person with a good heart, and that's an attribute that we should aspire to have also. Nowadays, we have the opposite extreme sometimes, that people care more about animals than they do about other human beings. And that's, not ideal. Okay, so next in Genesis chapter 37, verses 21 and 22, it says, Vayishma Ruvain, and Ruvain heard, Vayatzilehu miyadam, and he saved him from their hands. Vayomer, and he said, Lo nachnu nefesh, let us not hit a mortal blow. Vayomer elehem, Ruvain, and Ruvain said to them, Al tishpachu dam, and Ruvain said to them, do not shed blood. So Ruvain was the oldest son, and the birthright should have been his. So he had the most to lose. He had the most at stake by saving Joseph's life. But he put aside whatever he had to lose because he knew that Joseph merited the birthright, and if Joseph would have been dead, then he would have received the birthright. But he looked he overlooked all of that, and he told his brothers, basically he convinced them, instead of killing him, let's just sell him into slavery. Let's just get rid of him. And that way we don't have to deal with him. Our father will think that he's dead. We'll pretend like a wild animal ate him. What they did was they took Joseph's technicolor coat, they dipped it, and they shredded it up and dipped it in animal blood. And they told their father that they found the coat like that in the wilderness. And so the father was very restless and anguished for many, many years, because he didn't have closure. There was no body, obviously, that was found. So he didn't know really what was the fate of his son, and he was very troubled by that for many years. But Reuven said this in order to save his brother's life, but it's important to look at the way that he said it. He didn't say it in a way that revealed his true intention, which was compassion towards his brother. He said it in a way that his brothers would listen. He said it in a way that didn't say, let's not kill him. Instead he said, I don't want you to be guilty of murder. He was saying it as if to say that he's trying to save the brothers from the transgression of taking another person's life. Then we have in Genesis chapter 37, verse 25, Vayeshvu lechol lechem, and they sat to eat bread. Vayisu einehem, and they lifted their eyes. Vira'u hine alchat Yishmaelim. Here is a company of Ishmaelites, coming, Migilad, from Gilad, Vigmalehem, and their camels, Nosim, and the camels were carrying aromatic gum for incense, balm, and landum, and they were carrying it down to Egypt. So what is this coming to tell us? Basically, in those days, most of the camels were carrying kerosene and gas and fuel and stinky things to Egypt. But the fact that Joseph's caravan was carrying these sweet-smelling spices and had a pleasant aroma, so for the whole journey, even though he was sold into slavery, and before that he was thrown into a pit which had snakes and scorpions, he had a very big ordeal throughout this whole moving from Canaan to Egypt, but at least the journey was a pleasant journey. So it's telling us that we shouldn't take for granted the small things, like the fact that he had this pleasant smell along the journey. It's kind of like a foreshadowing of good things to come, even though his life seemed like it was going the wrong way, like everything bad was happening to him. But it's foreshadowing that something good, something sweet smelling is going to come out of it. So we should look at the little things in life and not take them for granted, because they could be signs for other things to come. Okay, and then the last part that I want to share is coming from chapter 39, verse 1, Vayosef hored Mitzrayma, and Joseph was brought down to Egypt. So in the last part of the week's Bible portion, Joseph goes down to Egypt, and he ends up working his way up from being a slave, a simple slave, to being an officer in the house of a very important person, Potiphar. And Potiphar's wife starts coming on to Joseph, and he's only 17 years old, but he tells her basically that he cannot be with her. And to punish him, she accuses him of rape. So he gets thrown into prison. But when he's in prison, the baker and there's another person in the jail, I forgot, I think maybe the butcher and the baker, they discovered that Joseph has this talent for interpreting dreams, and then when the Pharaoh needs his dreams interpreted, and Joseph is the only person in Egypt that can correctly interpret his dreams, the Pharaoh releases him, and Joseph becomes basically second to the Pharaoh in Egypt. He rises to very, very great power. And it so happens that there was a famine in the land of Canaan, and Joseph's brothers have to come to Joseph, not knowing that it's him, and ask for grain. So even though he was sold as a slave, Joseph was not bitter about all that he went through, and he was not even angry at his brothers, and he didn't even try to punish them for what they had done to him, because he realized, he had such tremendous faith that everything was from God and that everything was good and that all of this happened to him in order that he should be able to help and save his family. And so he was actually grateful for all of the circumstances that led to him being there and for him being to help his family in the end, because that was what mattered to him. So Vayosef Ored Mitzrayma, it's teaching us to realize that you can never know how events will actually turn out in the end. So something that seems really, really bad may not be bad, it may not be negative, so don't despair that maybe something good is going to come out of it. And then the opposite extreme is also true. When something very, very good happens, we need to avoid having extreme euphoria, because it can lead to depression if things start to shift or change, because everything is temporary. So by avoiding extreme reactions, we are better able to cope with the vicissitudes of life. So these are lessons from Growth Through Torah by Zelig Pliskin, and I hope that it helps to bring some tangible life lessons from this week's Bible portion. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and share, and may God Almighty bless you in all that you do. Bye-bye.